Museums have always been a popular center for information and culture, consistently harboring interest from people around the world. Museums aim to showcase historic events and cultural importance through various specified means. Participatory experiences have become a growing element of cultural experiences, and museums provide opportunities to access information in such interactive, engaging, and consumer-centered manner. They're essentially hubs of information and visualized education, making the material come to life in many aspects. Virtual museums, according to Encyclopedia Britannica, a collection of digitally recorded images, sound files, text documents, and other data of historical, scientific, or cultural interest that are accessed through electronic media. A virtual museum does not house actual objects, and most virtual museums are sponsored by institutional museums and are directly dependent upon their existing collections. Virtual museums provide an invaluable, inexpensive, accessible, and convenient opportunity for customers who are not able to otherwise enjoy museum exhibits in person for various reasons, such as distance, time, physical limitations, availability, affordability, etc. With more than 500 virtual exhibits, the Virtual Museum of Canada is the largest source of online content and experiences shared by large and small Canadian museums and heritage organizations. These online exhibits explore history, culture, science, and the arts, and feature fascinating stories and treasures from communities across the country. A wealth of learning resources is also available to teachers through the Teachers Center on the website. In 2014, the federal government transferred the Virtual Museum of Canada to the Canadian Museum of History. The museum's mandate is to enhance Canadians' knowledge, understanding, and appreciation of events, experiences, people, and objects that reflect and have shaped Canada's history and identity. The addition to this program helps the museum in its mission to raise the profile of Canadian history and culture on the national and international stage. Finally, through its investment programs, Virtual Museum Canada helps museums and heritage organizations share their stories and collections online through the Virtual Exhibits program that is intended for large, multi-year projects, and the Community Memories program, which is intended for smaller, local history projects. Under these two investment programs, eligible applicants are invited to submit proposals to produce digital content.
The Virtual Museum of Canada was established in 2001 and was transferred to the Canadian Museum of History in 2014, where it is overseen by the Canadian Heritage Information Network. The Virtual Museum acts as an aggregator of Canadiana, allowing various institutions to provide content, including close to 1,600 museums, other government agencies, educational institutions, and the private sector. This can lead to a discontinuity in the look and feel of the various exhibits, each of which is designed and created by sometimes vastly different organizations, each with a different artistic sensibility and varying levels of technical expertise. Most exhibits are hosted by the VMC, although some links in the VMC will actually take you to sites hosted on other servers, which can lead to difficulties returning to the VMC as the hosting site may have no links which can be used to return, forcing the user to repeatedly use the back button in their browser. Many of the exhibits don't make use of the latest internet technology, relying instead on older static designs that mimic a physical book or encyclopedia, with some still relying on Flash, making them unviewable on many phones and tablets, instead of using the latest HTML5 and Web 2.0 technologies, which would allow for a much more interactive experience. This approach removes much of the interactivity and personal interaction with other people that a visit to a real museum provides. There's a lot to be said for spending time in a physical space surrounded by other visitors, sharing in the enjoyment that comes with taking in the culture and history that the displays and artifacts provide. You're limited in your ability to truly examine the art or artifacts by the photos and resolutions provided by the creators of the displays. This contrasts with the many museums that offer the opportunity to study their collections in high resolution and sometimes in 3 dimensions. A good example is the online availability of high-resolution images of the collection at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, available on their website. An extra level of interactivity could be provided by a virtual presence via an avatar, as is currently offered by online communities like Second Life, where users can create their own spaces. Already used by several schools, it allows visitors to explore a virtual environment and interact with the content. Stanford University has created a virtual library that allows visitors to explore the exhibits to find the content they're looking for, with content linked to their library website. They can even join fellow students, who could be anywhere in the world, in the tea room for a face-to-face meeting. Museums can be created that offer not just exhibits, but educational lectures, and even an online gift shop. Upcoming virtual reality hardware and software will allow a whole new dimension of interactivity. While limited in their ability today, true virtual reality setups will allow visitors to not only see the artifacts in 3 dimensions, but to interact with them, picking them up and turning them around, to view them with a clarity that would be difficult to achieve even in a real museum while viewing the artifact in a display cabinet and behind glass. With simpler hardware needs, video streaming could allow visitors to explore a virtual museum using technology along the lines of Skype or FaceTime, seeing not just the exhibits, but other visitors as well, allowing them to share the experience together, discussing what they're viewing and sharing ideas and opinions in real time.
So why don't we have a look at some of the examples of things that we've been talking about up to this point to make it more immersive and culturally diverse. So this is something that I personally worked on using VR technology these days. As you can see, it's just the person's doing more interactions with things. As the person moves, the vehicle in this video in turn reacts to what they're doing in their movements. For a bit more of an in-depth example, we take reference of many YouTubers that have played this game, but specifically I took footage from Mr. Jacksepticeye. He's playing this game, but while this is a game, the premise of reaching for things, he's physically reaching for them, grabbing them with using the controller. These things really just help add another level. So as you saw he did with a pack of hot dogs, just imagine that as being an artifact instead, where he grabbed it, looked at it, turned it around, and really interacted with it more. While I have to admit that VR technology is a little bit out of range for most people due to just the natural expense of something like this, it's not out of possibilities. Just imagine walking around a small space, grabbing things, interacting, and looking at them. It would add a whole nother level compared to what we're at right now. However, why don't we have a look at something that's a bit more modern and doable today? So I took this footage courtesy of a YouTube channel known as Game Theory. They did this 2-part series where they went to Japan and just talking about the culture there, exploring it, and things like that. But what they did is when they went, they brought a 3D camera with them, and in order to let people explore while they were talking about whatever they wanted to talk about. So here's an example of something, what I was talking about, what they did. They are in front of the shrine and they're talking about the history and the lore behind the shrine. But as you can see, they used the technology to pop up little pictures of the things that they were looking at and that they're talking about. They're talking about the culture of these two, of the shrine and those 2 gods on each end. I've muted the audio in this example, but another cool thing that they did was just this, walking through a busy street, talking about the history and the culture and things going on around them. The person is free to look around while listening to what they're talking about. So if we're to just apply this in a museum concept, if someone had done this in, a local museum, people would be able to click on it and then watch and look around as someone was physically, having walked around at some point. But you can look around instead of just being still, which as it is now is just not as interactive, which can be boring and won't entice people to come learn about what they want to learn about. In this example, he went to a kendo place and was talking about the history of kendo and everything around it, But while he was talking, we got to look around and see what they were doing pertaining to what he was talking about instead of just looking at pictures, which made it more interactive and fun to learn. Imagine putting this in the context of the museum, where you're looking at an item and then this text box kind of pops up, giving a more in-depth explanation about the item itself. It's definitely more interesting than clicking on a picture and then scrolling through, a big wall of text while looking at the picture. Overall, if we added some sort of technology similar to this stuff into that Virtual Museum of Canada, we can achieve two things. One is we can just make learning about the different cultures more interesting. The other thing is it's just going to be more interactive, so people will want to learn, will want to explore, as opposed to as it is now, which is just a little bit harder to digest all the information.
In addition to interactions with other museum visitors, virtual tour guides would be a great asset to a virtual museum. Like in traditional museums, they would provide additional information to visitors interested in learning more. They could be present as avatars with which you could interact by clicking on them and selecting a question from a drop-down menu, similar to games such as Sims. In these drop-down interactions, visitors can select from preset questions to ask the tour guides. Another option could be to chat with an expert regarding more specific questions through a virtual museum office.
An additional method of creating discussion and participation to create community is to include hashtags with exhibit descriptions. The use of hashtags and social media applications like Instagram provide ways to engage with the content of exhibitions in creative ways. By selecting a photo subject and presenting a hashtag along with its description, visitors reframe and represent the content in new ways. This is an example of an asynchronous model of participation and networking to facilitate discussion. Visitors use social media to engage with exhibitions in rich and varied ways. These practices connect the experiences of museum visitors to a much broader online public. By building on these emerging practices, museums have the chance to enrich visitors' experiences and to extend their reach beyond museum walls.
Enhancing interactivity is of crucial importance, since users in it may not feel fully immersed in the information museums offer. Modern technology emergence has involved significant changes in relationships between organizations and the public, moving towards a mutual interaction between museums and their visitors. Museums are now looking to change and update their available tools and resources to better promote mutual interaction, such as this museum in Saudi Arabia. Users are able to browse subjects through various timelines at their leisure. For now, there are some who still focus on the production of information, such as the Roman exhibit at the Royal Ontario Museum. You can see here that the artifacts are behind glass cases with descriptions in the front, not ideal for visitor interaction. It is indicated that organizations are still in a migration period for models of unidirectional communication. The VMC is one of the only museums to offer such active participation and reciprocal action through modern tools in today's age.